30 years after giving me up for adoption. My mother handed me her bills and demanded I fund their retirement, so I got a restraining order and chose my real family instead of my DNA donors. I 32M need to write this down because what happened last month has been eating at me. My parents, Susan 58F and Robert 60M, contacted me after 3 decades to ask for money. Not a small amount either. They want me to fund their retirement. I should start from the beginning. I was adopted when I was 3 days old. My adoptive parents, Carol deceased and Shelby deceased, told me about the adoption when I was 7. They never hid it from me. Carol said they wanted me to know the truth because I deserved it. They were good people. Shelby worked as an electrician and Carol was a nurse. We did not have much money, but we had enough. They made sure I had what I needed for school. Shelby taught me how to fix things around the house. Carol helped me with homework every night at the kitchen table. When I was 16, Shelby had a heart attack. He died 2 days later in the hospital. Carol tried to keep things normal after that, but I could see the bills piling up on the counter. She picked up extra shifts at the hospital. I got a part-time job at a grocery store to help out. We managed. Carol died from breast cancer when I was 22. I was in my last year of college. She had been sick for 8 months but never told me until the end. She did not want me to drop out of school. I finished my degree 3 months after her funeral because she had worked too hard to pay for it. After college, I got a job at a software company. I worked long hours. I got promoted twice in 5 years. I met my wife, Rebecca 30F, at a work conference 6 years ago. We got married 3 years ago. Rebecca works in marketing. We bought a house 2 years ago in the suburbs. We have a daughter, Dorothy 2F. Life has been stable. Not exciting, but stable. Last month, I received a letter in the mail. The return address was from a town about 2 hours away. Inside was a handwritten note from Susan. She explained that she was my birth mother. She said she and Robert had been looking for me for years. She wrote that they wanted to meet me and talk about the past. She included her phone number and email address. I did not know what to do with the letter. Rebecca found me sitting at the kitchen table that evening, just staring at it. She read it and asked what I wanted to do. I told her I was not sure. Part of me was curious. Part of me did not see the point. These were strangers. They had given me up before I even knew them. Rebecca said it was my choice, but that maybe I should at least hear what they had to say. She said I might regret it later if I did not. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I sent Susan an email. I kept it short. I said I received her letter and was willing to meet once to talk. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our towns the following Saturday. Rebecca offered to come with me, but I said I wanted to go alone. When I walked into the coffee shop, I recognized them immediately from the photo Susan had included in the letter. They were sitting at a table near the window. Susan stood up when she saw me. She smiled and looked like she might cry. Robert stood up too and shook my hand. We sat down. The first 20 minutes were awkward. Susan did most of the talking. She told me about how they had been young when I was born. She was 18 and Robert was 20. They were not married yet. They had no money and no family support. She said they thought adoption was the best choice for me. She said they always wondered about me and hoped I had a good life. Robert nodded along but did not say much. I asked them why they decided to find me now. Susan said they had tried to find me before, but the adoption had been closed. She said they hired someone last year to help them locate me. She said they wanted to be part of my life now. She said they had missed so much and wanted to make up for lost time. I told them about Carol and Shelby. I told them about growing up in college and my job. I told them about Rebecca and Dorothy. Susan kept wiping her eyes with a tissue. Robert finally spoke up and said he was glad I had turned out well. He said they had worried about whether I was okay all these years. Then Susan pulled out an envelope from her purse. She said there was something they needed to discuss with me. My stomach dropped. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were printed financial documents, bank statements, investment account summaries, retirement fund balances. All of them showed very low numbers or red balances. Robert explained that they had some financial problems. He had worked construction for most of his life, but an injury 5 years ago left him unable to work. He was on disability, but it did not cover much. Susan had worked retail but got laid off 2 years ago. She had been trying to find work, but nothing steady had come up. They had gone through their savings. They were behind on their mortgage. Their car had been repossessed last year. Susan said they had thought about what to do. She said they knew I had done well for myself. She said she had found my LinkedIn profile and saw my job title. She said they would not ask if they had any other option. Then she said it. She said they needed help with their bills. She said they needed someone to help them through retirement since they had nothing saved. She said I was their son and family helps family. I sat there for a long time without saying anything. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. Susan kept talking about how much they regretted giving me up. She said they had paid their debt to me by giving me a better life with Carol and Shelby. She said now they needed me to help them. Robert added that it was the right thing to do. He said sons take care of their parents. I asked them how much money they were talking about. Robert pulled out a notebook. He had written down numbers. They needed help with their mortgage payment, which was 3 months behind. That was about $8,000. They needed a new car. They had been borrowing cars from friends, but it was not sustainable. That was at least $15,000 for a used car. Then they needed ongoing help. Robert said maybe $2,000 a month to cover their bills and living expenses. He said it would be until his disability got sorted out or Susan found steady work. But the way he said it made it clear this would not be temporary. I told them I needed to think about it. Susan reached across the table and grabbed my hand. She said she understood this was a lot. She said they just wanted a chance to be in my life. She said the money would help them get stable so they could focus on building a relationship with me and meeting Rebecca and Dorothy. Robert said they wanted to be grandparents to Dorothy. He said Dorothy deserved to know her biological grandparents. I left the coffee shop 30 minutes later. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while, then I drove home. Rebecca was waiting up. She asked how it went. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked what I wanted to do. I said I did not know. She asked if I felt any connection to them. I said no. I said they felt like strangers asking for money. She asked if I felt obligated to help them. I said I did not know. The next day, Susan sent me a text message. She thanked me for meeting them. She said it meant the world to them. She said she hoped I would consider helping them. She said they did not have anyone else to turn to. Over the next week, she sent me several more messages. She sent photos of their house with a foreclosure notice on the door. She sent a photo of Robert at a doctor appointment. She sent a photo of herself at a job interview. Each message ended with some version of asking me to think about helping them. I talked to Rebecca about it multiple times. She said it was my decision, but she thought it was strange that they only contacted me when they needed money. She said if they really wanted a relationship, they would have tried to find me years ago when things were better. She pointed out that they had clearly done research on me before reaching out since Susan mentioned my LinkedIn profile. Rebecca said it seemed planned. She said they knew I had money before they even sent that first letter. I thought about Carol and Shelby. They had sacrificed so much for me. Shelby worked extra jobs to save for my college fund. Carol went without things she needed so I could have what I needed. They never asked me for anything in return. Even when money was tight after Shelby died, Carol never made me feel like I owed her something. When she was dying, she told me to live my life and be happy. She did not tell me to pay her back for raising me. Susan and Robert gave me up. I do not blame them for that. They were young and scared and probably made the best choice they could at the time, but they did not raise me. They did not stay up with me when I was sick. They did not teach me to ride a bike or help me with algebra homework or come to my high school graduation. Carol and Shelby did those things. Susan and Robert are strangers who happen to share DNA with me. After 2 weeks of messages from Susan, I sent her an email. I told her I appreciated her reaching out and I was glad to know they were doing okay. I told her I was not in a position to provide financial support. I told her I wished them the best, but I did not think staying in contact was the right choice for me right now. I told her not to contact me again. She called me 15 times that day. I did not answer. She left voicemails. In the messages, she cried and said I was abandoning them just like they had abandoned me. She said I was punishing them for a choice they made when they were kids. She said she could not believe I would turn my back on my own mother. Robert sent me emails saying I was selfish. He said I had benefited from their sacrifice and now I would not help them when they needed it. He said real men take care of their families. He said I would regret this when they were homeless. Rebecca blocked their numbers on my phone. I blocked their email addresses. But Susan found my work email somehow. She sent messages there too. She told my boss's assistant that she was my mother and needed to reach me for a family emergency. My boss pulled me into his office to ask if everything was okay at home. I had to explain the situation. He was understanding, but it was awkward. Last week, Susan and Robert showed up at my house. Rebecca answered the door. They asked to see me. Rebecca told them to leave. Susan started crying on the front porch and said they had driven 2 hours just to talk to me. She said they were desperate. Robert said they were going to lose everything. Neighbors came out to see what was happening. Rebecca closed the door and called me at work. I came home early. By the time I got there, they had left, but they left another envelope on our doorstep. Inside was a handwritten letter from Susan that was 4 pages long. She wrote about how she had thought about me every day since giving me up. She wrote about the guilt she carried. She wrote about how finding me was supposed to fix everything. She wrote about how she never imagined I would reject them. The last paragraph said they had no choice but to reach out to other family members and friends and explain how their own son had refused to help them. I do not know what to do now. Rebecca thinks we should get a restraining order if they show up again. I keep thinking about whether I made the right choice. They are struggling, I have money, but they gave me up. Carol and Shelby were my real parents. Susan and Robert are people I met once in a coffee shop who want money. I do not owe them anything, but they keep contacting me, and now our neighbors, something is going on and work is awkward, and I just want this to be over. That is where things stand right now. I have not heard from them in 3 days, but I keep expecting another message or another visit. Rebecca says we need to stand firm. She says if we give them anything, they will never stop asking. I know she is right, but I still feel strange about the whole thing. Update 1: It has been 5 weeks since my last post. Things have gotten worse. Susan and Robert did not stop contacting me. They did exactly what Susan threatened in her letter. They reached out to anyone they could find who might know me. 2 weeks ago, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone I went to college with. He said a woman claiming to be my mother had contacted him asking if he knew how to reach me. He wanted to make sure I was aware in case it was some kind of scam. I thanked him and explained briefly that it was complicated. He understood, but I could tell he thought it was strange. Then my old high school friend Mark 32M called me. He said a couple had shown up at his parents' house asking about me. His parents still live in the neighborhood where I grew up. Susan and Robert had somehow found out where I used to live and went door to door asking neighbors if they remembered me. Mark's parents told them they did not have my current information and asked them to leave. Mark was calling to warn me. He asked if I was in some kind of trouble. I told him the short version. He said if they showed up again, his parents would call the police. Rebecca's parents live about 40 minutes from us. Her mother, Linda, 62F, called Rebecca 3 weeks ago. Linda said she had received a Facebook message from someone named Susan who said she was my birth mother. Susan had written a long message explaining that she and Robert were my biological parents and were trying to reconnect with me. Susan said I had cut off contact and they were worried about me. She asked Linda if Rebecca's family could help convince me to talk to them. Linda told Rebecca about it right away. She said the message seemed odd and pushy. Linda blocked Susan on Facebook. Then things escalated. A week and a half ago, Susan created a Facebook post. She did not name me directly, but she wrote about giving up her son for adoption years ago and recently finding him. She wrote about how her son had become successful and she was proud of him. Then she wrote about how her son had rejected her when she reached out. She wrote about how she and Robert were facing hard times and their son refused to help them even though they had given him life. She wrote about how adoption had broken her heart and now her son was breaking it again. The post got shared by her friends and friends of friends. Someone who knows Rebecca saw the post and recognized enough details to realize it was about me. They sent Rebecca a screenshot. The post had over 200 reactions and dozens of comments. Most of the comments were supportive of Susan. People wrote about how ungrateful some children were. People wrote about how families should stick together. A few people wrote about how adoptees owe their birth parents gratitude for choosing life for them. One person wrote about how biological connections mattered more than anything else. Rebecca was furious. She wanted to respond to the post, but I told her not to. I said engaging would only make things worse. But I felt sick reading those comments. People who knew nothing about the situation were calling me ungrateful and selfish based on Susan's version of events. Then my company's HR department contacted me. They said someone had called the main office line claiming to be the person said there was a family emergency and they needed my personal cell phone number because I was not responding to messages. The receptionist followed protocol and did not give out my information. Instead, she transferred the call to HR. The HR representative asked the caller to explain the emergency. Susan told the HR person that she and Robert were my biological parents and they were in financial crisis. She said I was refusing to help them and she needed someone at my company to intervene. She asked if someone from management could talk to me about the importance of family. The HR representative told Susan they could not get involved in personal family matters and ended the call. HR called me in to document the incident. They asked if I felt safe and if I needed any resources. I said I was fine, but I was embarrassed. I work in a professional environment, and now HR has a file about my birth parents harassing the company. Around the same time, Robert found Rebecca's Instagram account. Rebecca's account is private, but he sent her a direct message request. The message said he and Susan just wanted to talk. He said they were not bad people and they were only asking me to help because they were desperate. He said Rebecca seemed like a good person based on her profile and maybe she could help me see reason. He said Dorothy deserved to have grandparents in her life. Rebecca showed me the message. She declined the request and blocked him. Last week, my neighbor Karen, 45F, knocked on our door. Karen lives 3 houses down. She asked if everything was okay with my family. She said an older couple had been parked on our street in a gray sedan twice in the past week. She said they seemed to be watching our house. She said the first time she saw them, it was early evening and they sat there for about an hour. The second time was in the morning and they left after 30 minutes. Karen said she had not approached them but wanted us to know in case we needed to call the police. I thanked her and told her if she saw them again to let me know immediately. That evening, Rebecca and I saw the gray sedan ourselves. It was parked across the street with 2 people inside. I went out to confront them. It was Susan and Robert. Susan rolled down the window. She said they just wanted to see where I lived. She said they wanted to understand my life. Robert said they had driven by hoping maybe I would come out and they could talk. I told them they needed to leave and not come back. Susan started crying again. She said she did not understand why I was being so cruel. She said all they wanted was to be part of my life. I told them if they came back I would call the police. Robert called me an ungrateful bastard. I walked back to my house and they drove away. Rebecca wanted to file a police report immediately. I agreed. We went to the police station the next morning and filed a report for harassment. The officer was sympathetic but explained that because Susan and Robert had not made direct threats, there was not much the police could do yet. He said the report would be on file and if they continued to harass us or showed up at the house again, we could request a restraining order. He suggested we document everything, save all messages, take photos if they showed up again, and keep a log of incidents. Since filing the report, I have not seen the gray sedan again. But Susan sent me another email from a new email address I had not blocked yet. She said she could not believe I had involved the police. She said she and Robert had done nothing wrong except try to talk to their son. She said I was treating them like criminals when all they wanted was a relationship. She said she hoped I would realize what I was doing before it was too late. She said Robert's health was getting worse and they might not have much time left. She said I would have to live with the guilt of abandoning them. I blocked the new email address. Rebecca's brother Daniel, 28M, offered to help. Daniel works in IT and he offered to help us improve our online security and privacy. He helped us lock down our social media accounts. He showed us how to remove some of our personal information from public databases. He set up new email filters to catch messages from Susan and Robert. He also suggested we install a camera doorbell at the house. We ordered one and it arrived yesterday. Daniel came over to install it. Now we can see who is at the door without opening it. Dorothy has noticed that things are tense. She is only 2, but kids pick up on stress. Rebecca and I have been trying to keep things normal for her. We have not told her anything about what is happening, but she has asked a few times why Mommy and Daddy seem worried. Rebecca tells her everything is fine and distracts her with games or snacks. Work has been difficult. I find myself distracted during meetings. I keep checking my phone to see if there are new messages or missed calls. My boss has noticed I seem off. He pulled me aside last week and asked if the family situation was still ongoing. I told him it was, but I was handling it. He said to let him know if I needed anything. I appreciated that, but I also hated that my personal problems were affecting my professional life. Rebecca has been supportive, but I can tell this is wearing on her too. She makes comments about how she never signed up for this drama. She says things like, "She married me, not my DNA donors." I know she is frustrated. This situation is affecting our whole family. Our peaceful life has been disrupted by 2 people we did not even know existed in our world 5 months ago. 3 days ago, Susan's sister, my biological aunt, I guess, sent me a message on Facebook. She introduced herself as Margaret, 55F. She said Susan had told her everything. She said she felt she needed to reach out because Susan was her sister and she loved her. Margaret wrote that she understood my position, but she hoped I would reconsider. She said Susan and Robert were truly struggling. She said they had made mistakes, but they were good people who deserved a second chance. She said family was everything and I was missing out on knowing them. She ended the message by saying she hoped I would think about Dorothy and what kind of values I wanted to teach her about family loyalty. I did not respond. I blocked Margaret too. Last night, Rebecca and I talked about what to do next. She thinks we need to pursue the restraining order even though they have not shown up recently. She says the social media posts and the constant attempts to contact us through other people constitute harassment. I am tired. I am tired of blocking new email addresses and phone numbers. I am tired of wondering if they will show up at our house again. I am tired of explaining this situation to people. I am tired of feeling like I did something wrong when all I did was decline to give money to strangers. Rebecca asked me if I ever thought about just giving them some money to make them go away. I said I had thought about it, but I know it would not end there. If we gave them money once, they would come back for more. They would always have another crisis or another need. We would become their retirement plan. And I do not want Dorothy to grow up thinking that manipulating people and harassing them is how you get what you want. So we are moving forward with the restraining order. We have an appointment with a lawyer next week to discuss our options. We have documented everything, every message, every phone call, every visit to our house, every contact with friends and family. The lawyer will review everything and advise us on next steps. I never thought my life would include restraining orders and harassment reports. I thought meeting my birth parents might be awkward or emotional or even healing. I never imagined it would be this. Update 2, it has been 3 months since my last update. We did get the restraining order. It took about 6 weeks to process. The judge granted it after reviewing all our documentation. Susan and Robert are not allowed to contact me, Rebecca, or Dorothy directly or through third parties. They are not allowed to come within 500 feet of our home or my workplace. The order is in effect for 2 years. Susan and Robert were served with the order in early December. Susan called the police station and tried to argue that the order was unfair. She told the officer that I was her son and she had a right to see me. The officer explained that I was an adult and the court had determined her behavior was harassment. She hung up on him. For about 3 weeks after the order was served, things were quiet. I thought maybe it was finally over. Then 2 days before Christmas, I got a call from the police. Susan had violated the restraining order. She had sent a Christmas card to our address. Inside the card was a letter and several photos. The photos were of Susan and Robert from when they were younger. There was a photo of Susan pregnant. The letter talked about how this was their first Christmas knowing where I was and how much it hurt not to be able to spend it with me. She wrote about how she had bought gifts for Dorothy but could not give them to her. She wrote about how the restraining order was tearing the family apart and she prayed I would drop it. She signed the letter, "Love, Mom." Rebecca found the card when she went to get the mail. She did not open it at first because she did not recognize the handwriting. When she did open it, she called me immediately. I came home from work and we took the card and envelope to the police station. The officer who took our report said this was a clear violation. He said they would contact Susan and Robert and inform them they had violated the order. He said if it happened again, they could face criminal charges. Susan was contacted by police that evening. According to the officer who called us back, Susan became hysterical on the phone. She said she did not think a Christmas card counted as contact. She said she was just trying to reach out during the holidays. The officer explained that any attempt to contact us in any way violated the order. He warned her that another violation would result in her arrest. Christmas was tense. Rebecca's parents invited us to their house for Christmas dinner like they do every year. We went, but I could not relax. I kept thinking about Susan and Robert and wondering if they would try something else. Linda noticed I was distracted and asked if everything was okay. I told her about the Christmas card. She said some people do not know when to quit. She said we had done the right thing getting the restraining order. In mid-January, my supervisor told me someone had submitted a complaint about me to the company's ethics hotline. The complaint was anonymous, but it accused me of elder abuse. It claimed I was neglecting my elderly parents and refusing to provide financial support when they were in crisis. The complaint said this behavior reflected poorly on my character and the company should be aware they employed someone who would abandon family members. The company takes ethics complaints seriously. HR opened an investigation. They interviewed me. I explained the entire situation. I showed them copies of the restraining order and the police reports. I showed them the messages from Susan and Robert demanding money. The HR director was satisfied that the complaint was false and malicious. She closed the investigation and noted in my file that the complaint was made in bad faith. But it was humiliating. My coworkers knew something was being investigated even if they did not know the details. I had to sit through 2 meetings with HR explaining my personal family drama. I was almost certain Susan or Robert had filed the complaint, but I could not prove it. The company's hotline is designed to protect anonymous reporters. My supervisor said not to worry about it. He said anyone who knew me knew I was a good person. But it still bothered me. In February, Rebecca's car was vandalized. She came out one morning to drive to work and found that someone had keyed both sides of the car. Deep scratches ran from the front door to the back door on both sides. Whoever did it had also let the air out of all 4 tires. We filed a police report. The officer asked if we had any idea who might have done it. We told him about Susan and Robert and the restraining order. He said without proof or witnesses there was not much they could do. But he noted in the report that we suspected it might be related to the ongoing harassment. We reviewed the footage from our doorbell camera, but it did not capture the street where Rebecca's car was parked. Our neighbor Karen mentioned she thought she had seen a gray sedan on the street early that morning, but she was not sure. She had not paid close attention because it was dark and she was just leaving for work. The police said they would increase patrols in our neighborhood, but they could not station an officer outside our house. Rebecca was upset. The car was new. We had only had it for 8 months. Insurance covered most of the repair cost, but we still had to pay the deductible. More than the money, it was the violation of feeling safe in our own neighborhood. Rebecca said she felt like we were being watched. She started parking her car in the garage even though it was less convenient. Last month, I found out Susan had created a GoFundMe page. Someone I went to high school with sent me a link. He said he thought I should know about it. The GoFundMe was titled Help a Family in Crisis. Susan had posted a long explanation about how she and Robert were facing homelessness. She wrote about Robert's disability and her job loss. She wrote about how they had an adult son who was successful, but had cut them out of his life. She did not name me, but she included enough details that anyone who knew the situation would recognize it. She wrote about how they had tried everything to reconnect with their son, but he had rejected them and even gotten a restraining order against them. She wrote that they were now relying on the kindness of strangers because their own family had turned their backs on them. The page had raised about $1,200. Most of the donations were small amounts, $10 or $20. People left comments about how sorry they were and how terrible it was that their son had abandoned them. One person wrote about how adoptees often struggled with loyalty and gratitude. Another person wrote about how the son should be ashamed of himself. I showed Rebecca. She wanted to report the page. I looked at GoFundMe's terms of service. They have rules against fraudulent campaigns, but Susan had not technically lied. She and Robert were having financial problems. The page did not name me or defame me directly. Rebecca thought the restraining order might apply, but I was not sure. I decided to consult with our lawyer. The lawyer said the GoFundMe page was a gray area. Susan had not violated the restraining order because she had not contacted us directly or through a third party. She had posted something public and someone else had sent it to me. The lawyer said we could request GoFundMe take it down, but there was no guarantee they would. He said the best approach was to ignore it. He said engaging would only give Susan more attention and material for her narrative. I hated that advice, but I knew it was right, so I did nothing. The GoFundMe page stayed up. Over the next few weeks, it raised another $800. Then the donations stopped. The page has been inactive for about 3 weeks now. I check it occasionally to see if anything has changed, but it just sits there with $2,000 raised and a comment section full of people who think I'm a bad person. My Aunt Margaret reached out again. She sent me a text from a number I had not blocked. She said she knew about the restraining order and she was not contacting me on Susan's behalf. She said she was reaching out as her own person. She said she thought the whole situation had gotten out of hand. She said she understood I did not want a relationship with Susan and Robert, but she hoped I would not punish them financially. She said they really were struggling and the GoFundMe was not raising much money. She said if I could just help them get back on their feet, they would leave me alone. She said she would personally make sure they stopped trying to contact me if I helped them out. I did not respond. I blocked the number. Work has been better lately. The ethics investigation is closed and my supervisor seems to have forgotten about it. But I still feel on edge. I feel like I'm waiting for the next thing, the next message, the next violation, the next public post. Rebecca says I need to find a way to move past this, but I do not know how when Susan and Robert keep finding new ways to intrude into our lives. Dorothy is doing well. She will be 3 in a few months. She does not know anything about what has been going on. Sometimes I watch her playing with her toys and I think about what Susan said about Dorothy deserving to know her biological grandparents. But Dorothy has Rebecca's parents. Linda and Rebecca's father, David 64M, come over every other week. They take Dorothy to the park. They read her books. They are the grandparents Dorothy knows and loves. She does not need Susan and Robert. She does not need people who showed up demanding money and then stalked our family when we said no. Last week, Rebecca asked me if I ever regret how I handled things. She asked if I wished I had tried to have a relationship with Susan and Robert before cutting them off completely. I told her no. I said my first meeting with them made it clear what they wanted. They did not want a relationship. They wanted a bank account. If they had wanted to know me, they would have reached out years ago when they were not in crisis. They would have asked about my life without asking for money. But they did not. They came to me with financial statements and a list of expenses. That told me everything I needed to know. Update 3, it is now the end of April. I am writing this final update because I want to close this chapter. The situation with Susan and Robert has not been resolved in any satisfying way, but it has settled into a new normal. There have been no direct violations of the restraining order since the Christmas card incident. Susan and Robert have been quiet for over 3 months now. I do not know if that means they have finally given up or if they are just regrouping. I stay alert. I check the doorbell camera footage every morning. I scan the street for gray sedans when I leave the house. Rebecca says I'm paranoid, but she checks too. The GoFundMe page is still up, but no new donations have come in for weeks. It sits there with just over $2,000 raised. I looked at it last week and someone had left a new comment asking for an update from Susan. She has not responded. I do not know if they actually received that money or what they did with it if they did. I do not care anymore. I have stopped checking the page obsessively. I looked at it for the last time and then I decided I was done. Margaret sent one more message in early March. She said Susan and Robert had moved. She said they lost their house to foreclosure. She said they were living in a small apartment about an hour from where they used to live. She said Robert's health had declined and Susan was working part-time at a grocery store. Margaret said she was telling me this not to make me feel guilty, but just to inform me. She said she would not contact me again. I did not respond, but I did not block that number either. So far, she has kept her word. I have not heard from her since. Rebecca's car was fixed. We upgraded our home security. We installed cameras that cover the driveway and the street in front of the house. We also installed motion sensor lights. Our neighbors have been supportive. Karen still keeps an eye out and lets us know if she sees anything unusual. The neighborhood feels safer now, but we are more cautious than we used to be. Work has returned to normal. The ethics investigation is a closed matter. My supervisor has not mentioned it in months. I got a good performance review last month and a small raise. My boss told me I had handled a difficult personal situation with professionalism, and he appreciated that I had not let it affect my work even though he knew it must have been distracting. That felt good. It felt like validation that I had done the right things. Dorothy is thriving. She loves preschool. She has friends. She talks constantly about her teachers and the other kids. Linda and David took her to the zoo last weekend, and she has not stopped talking about the elephants. She is a happy kid. She does not know that somewhere out there are 2 people who claim to be her grandparents but have never met her and never will. That is how I want it to stay. Rebecca and I have talked about moving. Not immediately and not far, but maybe to a different neighborhood or a different suburb. We both feel like this house has been tainted by everything that happened. Every time I pull into the driveway, I think about the day Susan and Robert showed up on our porch. Every time I get the mail, I wonder if there will be another letter. Rebecca says a fresh start might be good for us. We are not actively house hunting, but we have started looking at listings online, maybe in a year or 2. I think about Carol and Shelby sometimes. I wonder what they would have said about all of this. Carol was practical. She would have told me to protect my family first. She would have said that giving birth to someone does not make you their parent, raising them does. Shelby would have been angry on my behalf. He had a temper when someone was treated unfairly. He would have wanted to confront Susan and Robert himself, but both of them would have supported my decision. I know that. I do not feel guilty. Some people might think I should. Some people might think I should have helped Susan and Robert financially since I could afford it, but I do not owe them anything. They made a choice 32 years ago, and I respect that choice. They placed me for adoption, and Carol and Shelby became my parents. That was the end of Susan and Robert's role in my life. They do not get to come back 3 decades later and demand I take care of them because we share DNA. The restraining order expires in about 18 months. I do not know what will happen when it does. Maybe Susan and Robert will have moved on with their lives. Maybe they will try to contact me again, if they do. I will get another restraining order. I will do whatever it takes to keep them away from my family. Rebecca and Dorothy are my family. Carol and Shelby were my family. Susan and Robert are strangers who made demands and threw tantrums when I said no. I am done with this. I am done checking my email for new messages from fake accounts. I am done wondering if they will show up at my house. I am done explaining to people why I will not help my biological parents. I am living my life. I am focused on my wife and my daughter and my job. I am focused on the people who actually matter to me. If Susan and Robert have really given up, then this is over. If they have not, then I will deal with it when it happens. But I am not spending any more energy worrying about it. I made my choice, I stand by it, and I am moving forward. That is the end of this story. There is no reconciliation. There is no moment where I realized they were right and I was wrong. There is no happy ending where we all became a family. This is just what happened. Two people gave me up for adoption and then showed up 30 years later asking for money. I said no. They harassed me and my family. I got a restraining order. And now I'm living my life without them in it. That is how it is, and that is how it will stay.